Hi, Michael. Thank you very much for joining us today. How are things in Vancouver?
Pretty good, and thanks for having me, James.
Pan American Silver is one of the largest silver producers in the world, having produced 19 million ounces of silver in 2021 and over 500,000 ounces of gold from 9 different mines. But before we examine your various operations, Michael, in more detail, why don't we begin with a brief overview of Pan American Silver?
Sure, pleasure. We are, as you said, we are the second largest silver producer in the world. Production, of course, impacted the last 2 years by COVID, so that's why we were just below 20 million ounces. Normally, we are, quite a bit above that number. So big impacts in Latin America, where most of our mines are located. We are where the silver is. Silver is not just evenly distributed through the world, so a lot of the silver is in the Cordillera, somewhere from southern Chile or Argentina all the way up to Alaska. And that's where we are located with our operations. 28 years of operating in Latin America. The biggest silver producer in the world is Mexico, followed by Peru. Those are our two biggest jurisdictions as well. But we have operations as well in Argentina and in Bolivia. And then we have two gold mines in Timmins in Ontario as well. So quite a diverse, very diverse portfolio, geographically diverse. And then, as I said, obviously a lot of silver production, but also a sizable gold production. You mentioned it was quite over 500,000 ounces. Normally we do somewhere between 500,000 to 600,000 ounces of gold from our production, mostly, as I said, in Ontario, and then from two large gold operations in Peru as well. So a very interesting combination, but as I said, we are located where the silver is, and that's really a geological reason and not just, I look at many places on the planet, obviously, and you can go and you can mine gold in many places, but you're quite a bit more restricted if you look at silver.
And Mike, what is the revenue breakdown between silver and gold?
Well, there's a big change. Of course, about 3 years ago, we closed the Tahoe transaction. And as we all know, that the silver mine that was involved in that transaction, Escobal in Guatemala, which is one of the largest already built silver mines in the world, is on care and maintenance, still awaiting the consultation process. So while that mine is still waiting to come back in production, Escobal, when it went into care and maintenance on the Tahoe, produced just about 20 million ounces by itself. So while that's is waiting, all our gold production is obviously producing. So that kind of changed a little bit the mix here. So we are probably looking right now, depending on the gold and silver price ratio, of course, probably 30 to 35% silver revenue. And then probably around 60%, 55 to 60% gold, and then the rest is base metals. Again, this is really, reason is the geology. You don't find silver by itself. It comes together with gold or with base metal. That's the mix we have. But this is how I see really a shorter term issue. When you look at our reserve distribution, it's actually about 50 to 55% silver, and probably about 30 to 35% gold and the rest base metal. So that's really where it goes in the future again. But meanwhile, while we have Escobal on care and maintenance, yes, there is obviously more revenue from gold coming than from silver. But I'm very happy with when you look at the prices. Silver actually underperformed quite a bit over the last 2 years gold. So that was not a bad business to be and selling a bit more gold. And with that, investing and financing our future silver growth. We probably have some time later on to talk about La Colorada mine in Mexico, where we made a very big polymetallic discovery below our silver mine. So again, a project that will come in the future. This one still needs to be built, but a project that is out there that will increase our silver exposure again. So just a transitory thing, really, to have a bit more gold right now, and moving into much more silver again in the future.
I definitely want to touch on La Colorada, but before we do that, you mentioned something that I find quite interesting, and that is silver has underperformed gold in the last 2 years. And before we move on, why do you think that is?
Well, if you look at the silver price, it's quite a complicated situation, as silver has a component for investors very important like gold, but it also has a very important industrial use. And as you know, I will call it the future green use or use in clean energy production and electrification of the world. It is playing a very, very important role because you need silver to make solar panels. You need silver in every electric circuit, in every motherboard, in your phones, in your screens, in your computers, in your car, of course. And electric cars now, they need more silver than combustion cars because there's more computers and more electric controls in it. You need to build a charging network. We're building 5G networks, et cetera, et cetera. So the largest part of silver uses on the industrial side goes at the moment into solar panels and into electronics, and it's over 50% of the silver use that is used on the industrial side. So that's one price driver, if you want to call it like that. And it really depends on growth perspective in the world, GDP growth, etc. And right now, of course, when we look forward into the electrification, how many solar panels will be built and installed, how many electric cars, etc., etc. All uses that are going to increase in the future, I have no doubt about that. So silver will play a very, very important role on the industrial side. But then the other part, and actually a stronger price driver, is really driven by the investors that buy silver bullion for the same reason they buy gold bullion, right? That's as a hedge for inflation, or whatever reason they might see fit to make that investment in silver bullion. We have seen quite a lot of volatility over the last few weeks in that sense by buying and selling, and I think it's really until we see some clarity here where the Fed is going with interest rates. But you know, again, I see a very strong role that silver will play here in the future. But definitely the last couple of years, you know, it's at a good price. I mean, I like what a silver price sits at, you know, somewhere north of $20. Pan American is a very profitable mining company at those prices. So by all means, these are great prices. But yes, they were a bit behind gold, and that's what silver does very, very often. I mean, you have seen it about, when was it, just about a year ago, a bit less than a year ago, where, you know, silver was underperforming gold. I think we have seen silver gold ratios go all the way to over 120, I think the year before. And then when it's changing very quickly. And then silver picked up, and I think we are now probably around 70-75 at a gold-silver ratio, so a much more normal relationship between the two metals.
Great insights, thank you. So let's move on. As you mentioned, you have 9 producing mines, but in the interest of time, I just want to touch on 3 of your larger mines, beginning with your flagship mine, La Colorada. Maybe you can just give us a brief overview of that mine.
Yeah, La Colorada is a very interesting mine. It has been a silver mine since the mid-90s or late 90s for Pan American. Was first quite a small operation. Then over the years we expanded production continuously. We reached about 2,000 ton a day. La Colorada normally mining very high grade, narrow silver veins. We have reserves right now of over 100 million ounces just on that mine. If you look at actually our total reserve sits over 529 million ounces, so a very large reserve. But a large part of that, over 100 million ounces, is located in those high-grade veins at La Colorada. So that's probably around another 12 years of production. We have similar resources, so maybe another 10 years. It's a very long mine life. But when we started just about 3 years ago, drilling very deep holes below those veins, we actually started to find what we call a skarn, so kind of a source for those veins. And we start finding these very wide ore bodies, while higher up in the veins, we are mining, you know, width of, let's call it 1.5 to 3 meter wide. We now drill wide intercept up to 270 meters. So completely different ball game, very, very wide mineralization, deep seated. lower grade, of course, than the veins, although we actually published a few holes in November which have actually very similar or higher grades than the veins, but there's a bit more base metals. It comes with a lot of zinc. There's some lead in it and quite a bit of copper as well. So very interesting. The resource that we came out a year ago for that, we call it the skarn, that big wide ore body, over 100 million tons, completely different size than what we have mining before, containing over 142 million ounces of silver. That's in addition to the reserve and resource I mentioned before, to the veins. A lot more drilling necessary. We announced that in November we'll drill about 60,000 meters. I think at the moment we're drilling probably about 10 to 12,000 meters a month at La Colorada. So that's moving very quickly. I would see, you know, if everything goes well, going mid-year, we should have a resource update on that big skarn, and then move forward into kind of a PA or later pre-feasibility to see how we mine that very, very large ore body. Of course, it will need at one point a different plant. It's so big, the tonnage will increase substantially, and it will run for a very long time. If you look at big base metal silver deposits of that tonnage, you know that you're looking at multi-generational mines, something really that, you know, really builds big mining companies. Those are the assets that not running just for a decade, but run for a very long time. So very, very excited that we have and that we made that discovery. Even more excited that it's below one of our best mines and we don't have to go out and purchase the project. It's 100% ours. So great way forward here with a big project for Pan American.
And I know it's still early days, but you know, if you look at a few years, when do you think you can bring those ounces into production?
Yeah, we didn't make a plan really that detailed. It will be a few years to build it. We actually start sinking a shaft, just started right now for ventilation purpose, that we can use for the current veins, and then just the top of the skarn as well. We actually start running a dual ramp this year as well. So you will see some project capital spending over the next few years. But yeah, we need to wait until the drilling is done and we come out with the updated resource and the PEA before I can tell you when we start mining these ounces. But yeah, very, very exciting project.
And I want to move on and ask you about another one of your silver mines, which is located in Peru, and that's called Huaron. And it produced 3.5 million ounces in 2021. Just provide us with a brief overview of this mine, please.
Yes, again, actually a bit wider structures, but it's a vein deposit, polymetallic as well. So it's coming, we produce concentrate there as well, copper, lead, and zinc, and then the silver reports to copper and lead concentrate that are being exported. The mine is in production for a long time. Pan American purchased the mine, I think, just in about the year 2000, and it has been in production before, so it's one of these really, really large, typical, you know, large vein deposits of central Peru with veins that just continue going deep, deep down. There are a few deposits which are not with Pan Am, but like, you know, we see vein extensions of 2,000 meters and more. We are right now with Huaron only, I think we're down about 600, 700 meters. So still a lot of room. If they continue, we actually developing levels deeper down. We find all those veins again. There are many structures covering very large areas. So these are mines that go for a long time. So that's definitely valid for Huaron. Large reserve, good silver production, good polymetallic silver production. So very happy to have that deposit, and I'm sure it will be, you know, an important cornerstone asset for Pan American for a long time as well.
And I want to ask you about one gold mine, Shahuindo, which is an open pit mine in Peru, relatively new, but just provide us with a brief overview of this operation.
Sure. Shahuindo, as you said, a big open pit in northern Peru, came to us through the acquisition of Tahoe Resources, and actually just started 3 years ago operations. maybe half a year, a year before. It was not even at full production when we purchased it, and we increased production to current levels. A great asset, a lot of exploration potential there as well. We have reserves right now for probably another 9 years or so. It's a run-of-mine heap leach, so completely different than our silver mines where we produce concentrate, so that produces gold. It has a little bit of silver in it, and actually it gets quite high grade in silver below the pit, so that will be an interesting exploration target for us in the future. But at the moment, yeah, we enjoy to have Shahuindo with us and producing, having strong gold production from that asset, as I said, for quite a large number of years more to come.
And Michael, we can't have a discussion on Pan American without talking about Escobal, which is a silver mine in Guatemala. When in full production, it'll be one of the world's largest primary silver mines, but operations have been suspended because of the government. Maybe you can just touch on that and give us an update as how things are progressing within Guatemala.
Right, so operations have been put on care and maintenance under Tahoe Resources. As I said, the mine was in production for about 3 years, produced around 20 million ounces a year, so very strong silver producer. It got into a court-mandated consultation process that has to be finalized. It hasn't been finalized earlier, so that's the reason why the courts under Tahoe put that in care and maintenance. We continue with that process, obviously. That consultation process between an indigenous group and the Ministry of Mines, so it's not run by Pan American, so I don't have really control over the timing, but it's moving forward. We're having meetings, consultation and pre-consultation meetings, where we are a party to it, and of course indigenous group and other stakeholders, and then run by the Ministry of Mines. So this is moving forward. Of course, there was some delay because of COVID, and many meetings over the last 2 years had to be postponed, but the meeting schedule has been taken on again, and we continue with the meeting. So looking really forward to this broad and wide consultation with the indigenous groups and stakeholders around the project. It's a very interesting mine for sure. It's one of these very few mines in the world, right, that have not only high grade but also large resources. You find maybe some very high grade narrow veins in Mexico or in some places, but very small tonnage. Or you find some maybe big tonnage, but very, very low grade. But finding big tonnage at high grade is something that doesn't happen very often in silver deposits. So a very unique deposit for sure.
And I really want to focus on the fact that company-wide Pan American produced 19 million ounces in 2021. And as you already said, if and when this comes back into production, it's going to be producing 20 million ounces. So you effectively double your silver production. So there's huge optionality associated with this one asset.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that was the reason why we did the transaction and purchased the assets from Tahoe Resources. I always saw it as a great opportunity, and it will take its time. It's worthwhile to wait for it for sure, and for sure look forward to add that optionality into our production profile. But as I said, at the moment, it's a care and maintenance, and we just have we have to work through that process.
So that's a great overview of your various operations, Michael. Let's move on. I want to touch on your balance sheet now. You have a very strong balance sheet, very little in the way of debt. You have a large credit facility of $500 million. How much cash do you have, and how will you allocate it in the coming year?
Yeah, so as of course, the Q4 numbers will only come out in February. So as of Q3, it was about I think $324 million of cash and short-term investment. You mentioned we have an undrawn credit facility of $500 million, so over $800 million of liquidity available to us. It was always very important to us, and it's very important to me to have a very strong balance sheet. I think it's absolutely important for a company in the mining space, and especially if you mine precious metals where you see a lot of volatility, that you have a strong balance sheet. It just allows you to do always the right thing. So it allows you to focus on exploration, corporate development, etc. when prices are low, which is very important, which is the right time, obviously, to do all that. It allows you to maintain all your development capital while prices are low, and we know that this is always going to cycle. So it's very important to have the cash available to always do your development, etc. So to stay ahead in the game and not have to cut that back when prices are low. But it also, of course, gives the opportunity on the business development side to do something to deploy that cash, and then it helps you when you make a big discovery or you have a great project like the discovery, the skarn I described at La Colorada. So we have a strong balance sheet available to actually invest in these high return projects. And last not least, and really important to me, we don't have to go to the shareholders to ask for additional capital. You know, the last time we had to do that is actually all the way back to early 2009. So I can hardly remember it. So and that's very important. You know, you can obviously go back and do, lots of companies do share buybacks when they have more money, etc., etc. I just prefer not to issue those shares in the first place, and keep a strong balance sheet, have projects and mines that generate a lot of free cash flow. And you know, that's really the way to run a stable long-term business through all the ups and downs in the silver and gold market.
In the next few minutes, Michael, I just want to ask you a few general questions about Pan American. As you mentioned, you have 9 producing mines. Would you ever consider selling off some of your smaller mines to focus on your more larger, more profitable mines?
Well, look, I'm always looking at optimizing our portfolio, and that means looking at acquisitions, looking at divestitures. We sold off a few smaller projects over the last few years. So I'm always focused on that. Our business development group, of course, always looking into that with the idea to consolidate really the highest quality mines we can have, producing the highest quality and best return ounces that we can. So that doesn't always mean just the highest amount or highest number of ounces, but really producing the highest quality ounces we can. So we're always working on that. You know, sometimes that's easier to do than in other parts of the market. Sometimes you find great buyers that you know, want to take it on, and they have different idea what they could do with the deposit. Sometimes it takes a bit longer, but no, we are always focused on that, and that's just part, I think, the normal part of building a stronger mining company.
And just a continuation of that, Pan American, as you mentioned, has 2 producing mines in Canada. Would you consider increasing your exposure in Canada or the US for that matter?
Absolutely, but it always depends on the quality, as I said, of the assets. You know, having additional geographical diversification is great. I love having, as I said, with 9 assets, that diversification is really a great thing. You know, if you have run only like 1 asset or 2, there's a big risk there. If something goes wrong in that asset, that you get into trouble as a company. So having diversification with assets, but also geographically, is very, very important. And having more assets in North America, by all means, but again, it really depends on the size. For us, it has to be sizable to move the needle for Pan American, and it has to be of high quality. So it could be, you know, silver, silver, gold, gold, silver, with base metals. That doesn't really matter. For me, it's really depending on the quality of the asset, on the return they deliver to Pan American.
So you don't have a preference for gold or silver. It's all about profitability and quality of the asset.
Well, as I said, of course, we are focused on silver. It's called Pan American Silver. But my point is that, as I said before, geologically, silver doesn't occur alone. So it's very hard just to find a silver asset. So you could choose between buying, you know, silver with gold, probably mostly in oxides, or you buy silver with base metals. And that doesn't really matter for me. It's really the quality, as I said, of the asset. If I go with the silver gold, or sometimes maybe a bit more gold silver or silver base metal deposit. But at the end of the day, of course, we're a silver company, and people, lots of people buy our shares because of the silver exposure for sure.
And Michael, Pan American operates in 6 different countries. Navigating the politics in each of those countries must be very complex and time consuming. How do you and your team do it so effectively?
Well, most importantly, we are very decentralized. We don't try to run everything out of Vancouver. We have a small team in Vancouver, very accomplished team. We're working together probably over 15 years now. Most of the mines we build or expanded actually with the current team. So that's very important to me. Then we have a lot of experience in Latin America. I worked and lived all my life, all my career in Latin America. We speak the language, and then we have very strong local teams. So, these are not expats; they are really local teams, and that's what we count on. So, very strong local leadership, decentralized structure, and really understanding the places we work in. And as I said, speaking the language, knowing the culture. Most of the management team worked and lived in Latin America as well. So that's really the combination for success, I think.
Mike, as we wrap up, what can investors expect in terms of news flow in the coming months from Pan American Silver?
Well, we're going to go through obviously to Q4. We showed the production, you mentioned it, but we have to wait for the financials. So the financials going to come through. We're going to come out with the outlook for 2022 as well. We actually hold back a little bit on that for a few weeks just to see how we go in Latin America through the Omicron wave here. 2021, 2022, as difficult as they have been, as years, they have been very, very exciting actually for Pan American. We paid back all our debt. You mentioned it. We actually increased 3 times our dividend. Last year by 43%. So and when you look at the dividend you get with Pan American, we actually returned about $550 million of dividends since 2010. There's a bit of earlier a few share buybacks in there, but mostly dividend payments. And as I said, we increased it during the pandemic 3 times. So very exciting, I think, for shareholders that as well. But at the end of the day, I think most shareholders buy Pan American shares for the exposure to silver and for the exposure to growth. So news flow that's going to come out on La Colorada, for example, as I said, this really exciting long-term project will be very important for us, and I think very important for our shareholders. We will have the update of our reserve and resources. Exploration is very important to us, always has been, and as I said, the La Colorada discovery there is a result of that. So our updated resource and reserve statement comes actually out in the middle of the year, not at the beginning of the year. So another important part to look at, and then for sure the updated resource as part of that for the skarn at La Colorada.
That's a great overview. I'm going to ask you one more question before I let you go, Michael. I'm going to put you on the spot. Gold is trading at or near its all-time high. When is silver going to take out its all-time high of $50 an ounce?
Yeah, people always ask me about the silver price, and of course, my job is really, to produce as much silver as we can at as a low cost as possible. The silver price, wherever it is, I obviously don't have control over it, and I don't have a crystal ball neither. Where it's going to go. All I know, and as I said at the beginning, I see a lot of really exciting uses for silver, a lot of new uses, and they see this big change from early in my career where silver really was just used in photography, and now you have so many important uses for silver. And when you look forward where we want to bring our world, those uses will just increase and not decrease. It's just very clear to me that we're going to electrify the world, and we're going to need a lot of metals to do that. We need a lot of copper, of course, and other metals, battery metals, etc. But that's only possible with silver because everything will be controlled by electronics and clean energy production. So we need a lot of silver for that. So if you look at that, I think there's a bright future ahead of us for silver. When does it going to happen? And it's going to pick up again against the gold. Maybe it could happen with some more investment demand next month. It can happen a bit later. I really don't know. But as I said, if you look a bit at the longer term for silver, I think it's a very, very exciting story to look at.
Great insights and a great overview of Pan American Silver. Thank you for sharing the story with us today. To all of the viewers, if you have any further questions for Michael or his team, send us an email to info@bloorstreetcapital.com and we will get you an answer to your questions. Once again, Michael, thank you.
Thank you very much. Have a good day.